the crowd, see how it is. Because seeing Futurepreneur, you know, in action that day, it was kind of like, you know, very impressive what they're doing. You know, it's just, I have a big problem with how they're focusing on their success. You know, they're working as like a mortgage company, basically. You know, it's like, oh, I have this loan, I give it, my drop rate is low, so I'm happy. So I'm, you know, I'm doing great. But it's good that, you know, we have something like that.
Yeah, whenever there's things like that, it's a question of the mandate, right?
Yeah.
And does it make sense? Like I look at where's government money going? Because used to be they were giving a lot of money to IBM, Google, and a few of these other companies to run their incubators and accelerators. And I'm like, these are multi-billion-dollar companies. I'm not really sure they need the government funding, but things like Futurepreneur, like the BDC, like that are giving the money to and helping the small business owners, I definitely is a step in the right direction. My experience with some of the enterprise accelerator programs is they are only interested in the ones that they think they're going to fund and that they're going to invest in and buy and pull out of Canada. It's like, so why are we investing in them?
That is a scary trend.
That
is a very scary trend.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Something happened. Hang on a second.
Maybe you muted me.
Say something.
Hello?
No, can you guys hear Siavash? Anybody in the chat room? I was chatting earlier, but we lost.
I'm connected.
Like the things that, like, it doesn't say you're muted. Oh, now it says you're muted. Now
I just did that to see if it's working.
It, so maybe
it's working.
Hang on.
No.
Anybody in the chat room? Can you hear him? I'm gonna switch to.
Oh, somebody's saying
I can. Okay, hear. Andrew can. So it's me.
Okay, so you got to figure it out, Greg.
Hello. Huh. What is happening here? Why can't I hear you? Thank you, Andrew, for letting us know. I'll figure this out. That is better. Definitely having a problem here. Give me a second. It's not switching my microphone. You can still hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, because for some reason it's decided to use some of all right. I will try and get my stuff going. Everyone can hear you. So why don't you introduce yourself and I will try and get things working on my end.
Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. I'm Siavash Shekarian. I'm an engineer and a lawyer, and I'm currently practicing business immigration law. That means that we're focusing on helping foreign entrepreneurs bring their businesses to Canada, establish them, grow them, and make them into success stories. I think that was very quick for Craig to get things going. And I'm excited for the weekend, and I hope all of you listening are excited for the weekend too. Craig, are you excited for the weekend? Oh, we can't hear you. There you go. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. So can you hear me?
Perfect. Yeah, I just quickly introduced myself and I told everyone that I'm excited for the weekend, and I hope you are excited for the weekend too.
Fantastic. Something happened with my microphone and my earphones, but now we're plugged in and we're ready to go. Just before we get started, if you have questions, put them in the chat room, put them in the Q&A window if you're in Zoom, or the chat window on YouTube. We want to answer your questions, so definitely put them there. And we'll get started with, how has the startup visa program evolved over time? And what can we anticipate in terms of future changes or improvements to the program?
Okay, perfect. So let's start with the first part of the question, the evolution of the startup visa program. The startup visa program began as a pilot, I think, back in 2013. And it's 10 years now. So we have been having the startup visa program for 10 years now. It started as a pilot. And then I think in 2018, it became a permanent program. And basically what it says is Canada is open for innovative businesses that can create jobs for Canadians. You can be up to 5 applicants per one business that can apply to get a letter of support from a designated entity. That's requirement number 1 for the startup visa program. Then you have to show that you have the language proficiency of CLB5, and there's a ownership requirement in that business, which says that the applicants must own more than 50% of the business, and each applicant alone should own more than 10%. And the final requirement is you have to have enough settlement funds. And settlement funds meaning you have to have enough money for the first year of coming to Canada. There is a chart starting with $13,000-$14,000 for a family of 1, and it's increasing by as your family size increases. So that's the startup visa program in a nutshell, right? You have 4 requirements. You have to have a letter of support. You have to have language requirement. You have to have settlement funds, and then you have to own the majority of the business. So that's how the startup visa program started, and that's how the startup visa program pretty much functioning right now. When we started, the startup visa program had 3 types of designated organizations. So we have venture capitals that can give you a letter of support. We have angel investors that can give you a letter of support, and we have incubators that can give you a letter of support. Legally speaking, the VC, if they want to give you a letter of support, they have to commit to investing $200,000 in your business. Angel investors, they have to do $75,000 in the business, and incubators, there is no minimum investment commitment to give you a letter of support. When the program started back in 2013, we had 32 venture capitals. Right now we have 28. So that's interesting, right? So we have less venture capitals today than we had when the program began. When the program began, we had 6 angel investors. Right now we have 8. So about same, but incubators is very interesting. Back in 2013, we only have 14. Right now we have 51. So it's like almost 3.5 more number of incubators that we have today. In terms of the anticipated changes of the startup visa program, what we know is that during collision of this year, in summer of 2023, the immigration minister, Sean Fraser, back then, he was the immigration minister, he announced that they're going to make some changes to the startup visa program. The most important, in my opinion, is that they want to give out work permits now to everybody in the applicant group. Before, with the startup visa, you could have applied for permanent residency, and while you were in processing, you could have also applied for a temporary work permit, allowing you to come to Canada while your permanent residency application was in processing. But the requirement was not everybody in the group can get that work permit. To get that work permit, you had to be designated as essential. Essential basically means if your application is refused, everybody else's application is refused, but the point you get is that you could apply for the work permit. Now they're saying we're going to give work permits to everybody in the startup group. Not only we're going to give work permits to everybody, but we're going to give 3-year work permit. Before it was 1 year. So after 1 year, you had to go through the process of renewing your work permit. Now they're promising that we're going to give work permits to everybody in the group, and they're going to be for 3 years. And most importantly, they're going to be open work permits. So you're not just limited to working for your startup venture. You can go work for somebody else if your startup is still hasn't gotten enough traction to pay you a salary and you want an income supplement. You can go work for somebody else using your open work permit. So that's one anticipated change that we're hoping to see before the year end, as the ex-minister promised in Collision 2023. The other thing is, one of the biggest problem, and I think the biggest problem with the startup visa program right now is the processing time. Right now, we're looking at 37 months, right? So the minister said, we're going to come and create a priority stream. We're going to prioritize startup applications that have capital investment and also that have letter of support from this network of designated organizations under Canada Tech. Let me just make sure that I have the name right. It's this network that if your designated organization is part of, it's Canada's Tech Network. That's what they call it. So if your DO is part of that network, you're supposed to get priority. So these are the changes that we are anticipating for the startup visa program.
Great, and you mentioned a few of the significant changes this year. Is there anything else that was announced that we should be discussing about the startup visa program?
They have increased the cap of the program, but that was announced before the summer. So before it was at 3,500 applicants per year for 2023, 2024, I think we're going to 5,000, 2025, we're going to 6,000. So this means the government is happy with how the startup visa program is performing and they're expanding it. And as I told you, the statistics about how many designated organizations we have, we already see a lot of incubators, becoming designated as time passes. So that's the capacity, and then the work permit and the priority. That's pretty much it.
And what's the queue like right now? Like if people apply right now, how long are they waiting?
37 months. That's what they're saying. That's what they're claiming on the websites as processing time. But in our experience right now, when you apply in 6 to 8 months, you get a file number, and then the processing is, somewhere 5 to 6 months. It really depends. The startup visa processing unit is not consistent. There's some applications that are happening like quickly, some are in queue, but based on what the IRCC, the immigration ministry in charge of administrating the immigration law is claiming right now is a long inventory with a long processing time of 37 months. For the PR, for permanent residency. But then again, if you're applying for work permit, you're falling under this expedited category that, they're promising 2 weeks processing, but in practice, 2 to 3 months, depending on where you're applying from, because that's another thing with our immigration system, right? Depending on where you're applying, if you're applying from Tehran, if you're applying from Beijing, it's very different. Different visa offices, different processing times.
So since you're on this, and we have a few questions coming in from the chat room, so please keep them coming. We're talking about permanent PR, permanent residency, I guess. In your experience, and you mentioned this, there is significance to the timing. Is there any significance to the timing between receiving your temporary number and generally, receive a temporary number when they apply, but they generally don't receive a permanent file number until much later, 18 plus months. Is there a connection you've noticed between the receipt of that number and the processing time, or is it just?
Honestly, we don't want to speculate, right? A lot of people ask us that question, but as I said, it's normal. It's very normal with the startup visa program for you to get a temporary file number if you submitted a paper application till you get a permanent file number. They're not doing paper anymore. So it's all online now. You have to submit your application online unless there's an exception for disability. But then for online application, you apply, you just get a confirmation, generic confirmation email, but then till you get the file number, it takes some time. How long that time is, we know this is something that we're seeing in our practice and are talking with our colleagues that are very active in the startup scene. We're saying that the processing time is decreasing, but overall, you can't really speculate. All that matters is for the people asking these kind of questions, make sure that you submit a good application and let the time, pass its due course. But if it's going over and beyond what they're claiming as processing time, that's when you have to follow up on your application.
You mentioned that they're prioritizing groups with capital allocated to their project in the startup visa program. What does that look like in practice?
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know because that's what the minister said we're going to do. And they are not yet, they haven't rolled it out so we know how this actually works in practice. So let me make this crystal clear. We know that the minister has promised the changes to come by the end of this year, of which we have 2.5 months left, but they're not yet rolled out. So as things stand right now, we're still under the normal startup visa program. Nobody's prioritized over anybody else. But they're saying that they're going to roll out this new amendment to the program that will prioritize applications with capital commitment and with applications with letters of support from this network.
What types of startups are best suited for the startup visa program? And what are the key eligibility criteria for both entrepreneurs and their supporting organizations?
Well, the second part of the question I addressed in the first question. The eligibility is language, letter of support, settlement fund, and ownership requirements of the business. So these are the four. And for designated organizations, it depends. If you are a venture capital, you're governed by CVCA. If you are an incubator or angel investor, you're governed by NACO, and they each have their own sets of requirements for monitoring the performance of the designated organizations under them. So VCs, CVCA, incubators and angels, NACO. In terms of the first part of your question, so I addressed eligibility, and the other question that you had, what was the first part of your question? It just skipped my mind.
Sorry, let me just scroll back to where it was. What types of startups are best suited?
Oh, types of stuff. Oh, you can. There are, as of today, there are 81 different perceptions of what kind of startups is Canada, right? So we don't have specific sectors that government come out and say, oh, we need startups in these sectors. They're telling you we need startups that can get letters of support from 81 different designated organization. And these DOs, they can decide which startups they want to pick. Some of them are sector agnostic. They pretty much, work with any kind of startups. Each of them, they have their own certain criteria. So there is no one general answer to the question that you're asking, right? You have to try. So if I'm a startup applicant and if I want to get value for my money and time that I'm paying to the designated organization, I have to do my research, right? It's just like if I want to apply for a school, I want to go look at the schools. Are they catering to the type of startup that I have? Or look at their advisor composition, look at their mentors. Do they have the kind of knowledge and expertise that I'm after? And then I make an application to those deals.
So I've got a couple more questions here. Curious about what details are for work permits. There's lots of refusals as of late. I understand that there must be a case made that the founder is required in Canada to do business, but what does that look like in practice? What barriers do we need to prove?
For the work permit?
Yeah.
That's a good question, because the work permit requirements of the startup visa program kind of silently changed in May of 2023. So before, they said, if you want to get the temporary work permit under the program, just show us your letter of support. And then the settlement fund for work permit was higher than that for permanent residency. If you had those requirements based on the program, you should have been eligible for the work permit. Now they have changed it and they made it harder. And I think it's a good strategy that the government is adapting. They're right now saying, if you want to get the startup visa work permit, not only you have to show us that you have a letter of support from a designated entity, you have to show us that you have already applied for the permanent residency, and you have to show us and tell us about your business plan. Before, it wasn't really that important, right? They didn't look for it. Right now, they want to know what it is that you're coming to Canada for. And also, this is another hurdle that they have created, which I think for good reason. You have to show them that you have enough money to do what it is you're claiming you want to do. Right? And it makes sense, right? If I say, I want to come to Canada and start this business and I need $300,000 for it, but I don't have it. Like, okay, why are you coming here? Because you're going to lose money, right? And it's really different. So the policymaker correctly gives discretion to the officer to determine how much is enough. So if my startup claims that I'm manufacturing this clean tech fuel for jets and I need multi-million dollars for the plant to produce it, I have to show I have that money. But if my startup is, listen, I'm a SaaS, I can code myself, I just need an office and a computer, settlement fund is okay, I don't need any money, then that works too. So it really depends on your business, but you have to make sure that you make the case to the officer deciding about your work permit application that you have the financial ability to do what it is that you're claiming that you want to do. Why? Because your work permit as of today is a closed work permit, right? So you're basically, if you're bootstrapping your startup, you're paying your own salary. So that's something that they have recently changed, and they didn't make a huge noise about it. But I think the website for the user side is now updated and it's reflecting the changes. So it's asking, you know, on the user side, it's asking, show us your business plan, tell us why your business is viable, tell us how your business is going to contribute to the Canadian economy, and also tell us and show us that you have enough money to do what it is that you're claiming you want to do for your business.
Now, you mentioned they're asking about business plans. So is it different, or are there different information you need to highlight from, say, talking to an investor? How can entrepreneurs best prepare their business plan or pitches to maximize their success for the program?
There is no one certain template per se, or there is no, you know, they come in different shapes and sizes. So I think the more your business plan, your pitch deck is aligned with reality of your business, the higher your chances. So try to be as real and as pragmatic about your business as possible. And you usually get to that point when you do enough research and outreach. It's one thing I sit behind a computer and do market research, and it's another thing that I start, you know, utilizing my LinkedIn network and my extended network to find somebody who knows something about the Canadian market that can actually help me, you know, because that's very, very important. And if your business plan has, you know, aspects that it can show that you took some action into, you know, how you want to do this business, you have a higher chance of, you know, having a good business plan for the sake of your immigration application.
Speaking of taking action, is it best practice for applicants to be submitting progress regularly on the online platform, or does it make sense to wait until IRC asks?
No, you don't have to update them. Let them ask you when they want to ask you, right? Because there are two sides to the startup visa program, right? One side is you as the applicant, and one side is a designated organization as another stakeholder of the startup visa program, right? They have to send reports, and they're really different. Some of them they do monthly reports, some of them they don't even report, some of them, so they're very different. You as the applicant, I would say wait and answer the questions that you're asked. You don't have to proactively send updates. It's not a requirement. And you can't really say, oh, I'm giving updates, so it's a good thing, or it's, you know, it adds to the advantage of my program. No, it's just when the processing, when your file gets to processing, the officer sits down, looks at your business, and based on what they're before them, they're going to ask you questions, and then you address the questions that are asked.
Now, you mentioned financial requirements. Can you talk about financial requirements for entrepreneurs and supporting organizations, and what documentation is necessary?
Well, financial requirement, one of the things that is a must for your PR application is settlement fund, right? There's a chart that goes based on your family size. For a person of one, there's a number, I think, I don't know, 14, 15,000, and then it goes higher as your family grows. So that's what you have to make a PR application. But then if you're going for work permit application, it's what I said. You know, you have to show that you have enough investment funds, is what they call it. Settlement funds is something that when we give you PR, you have to show us that you have settlement funds so you can come and settle in Canada, at least for 1 year. That's a chart you follow. For investment funds, it really depends on your business. As I said, you know, I gave the example. Are you a manufacturer needing multi-million dollar, or you're just a coder that you can do with one computer and one desk? And in terms of what kind of documents I have to prove, you know, it's very simple. You know, bank statements, or there are different kinds of documentation that you can prove that you have liquid funds. Oh, liquidity is something that is very important. You can't say, oh, I have this property, right? Property is not liquid. So for settlement funds and for investment funds, they're looking for liquid funds, you know, cash, stock, something that, you know, that you can fairly quickly liquidate. Cash is the best, you know, something in the bank. Hey, the money is ready. I'm there. I hit the ground. I can utilize this money to, you know, to conduct my business.
Are there any negatives or pitfalls for entrepreneurs that they should be aware of when applying for the startup visa program that may reflect, I don't know, getting a work permit later on?
Oh yeah, for sure. Of course. First of all, always tell the truth. Always tell the truth. If you're not sure about the truth that you're doing, do not submit an application, right? So tell the truth. And if the truth of your business, and businesses change, right? This is another thing. The startup visa program, the Canadian startup visa program, honestly speaking, comparing it to another 20, 19, 20 countries that are doing startup visas, it's a very flexible program. It's very permissive, right? It's straightforward and it's simple, but then it doesn't clarify what if my business changes in the middle, right? I submit a PR application today, a year and a half later, and my application is not processed. I'm considering an exit. What happens, right? So there are a lot of gray areas that you don't know. So good practice is whenever something changes in your business, do inform material changes, right? If you're like the ownership structure changes, just make sure that you communicate that change to IRCC. And most important of all, get advice. Get advice, because everything you can do, do it yourself, but it's always prudent, especially because of the complexities involved in the startup visa program. Get expert advice. And then act accordingly.
We've had some great questions and some more. Keep the questions coming. Here's another one. Are there any trends that you've seen in what the expectation of progress is at the time of the file is processed? Meaning that, we had a 37-month lead time, processing time. A lot can go wrong. So the incentive for applicants to dump all their funds at the start is low, but they also need to keep building the product actively. Is there trends you've seen in there or best practices?
Well, there is. I understand the question. The simple answer is keep on working on your business all the time, regardless of where you are in processing with IRCC. If you're a genuine entrepreneur, you have to genuinely be working on your business. Now, let's look at it from a business perspective. I am creating a business for Canada. I yet do not have the permission to go to Canada. I do not have certainty about my immigration status. So that has a huge impact on how I spend time on my business and how I spend money on my business. So at the same time, so there's a balance that you have to meet, right? The balance between, I still have many immigration uncertainties in my mind, but at the same time, I have a business that I really want to do, right? So you have to create a balance between the two. You can't say, I'm not going to do anything until you give me my PR. Like if you're serious about your business, I'm sorry, we're not going to give you the permanent residency, right? If you just say, I did my incubation, so goodbye, you're essentially telling me you're not serious about the startup visa program, right? Because there's this thing that we have in our immigration system, and I think we have it for very, very good reasons. We say we will refuse your application if it becomes evident to the deciding officer that you did this business mainly or primarily to gain a immigration privilege. So, and how do they assess that, right? How can they really assess your intention? Was that immigration or was that business? Which one was primary, right? They look at your conduct, right? How serious were you about really moving your business forward? So keep on working on your business always, but how much work, what do I do, exactly what it is, it's very business specific. Get advice for that. That's something, because it's not an easy balance to strike between, I don't know what's happening with my immigration status and I have this business right now. If I spend $25,000 on marketing, I can really roll out my product. But then again, what if I spend the $25,000 and IRCC tells me, you're refused, right? So these are very, very legitimate questions. These are tough questions. And one of the reasons why I'm saying the biggest problem with the startup visa program at the moment is processing time is because of this very reason. So make sure you get proper business advice.
We talked about there's no really favor on different type of startups, big or small, but is Canada looking to support specific industries? I always hear about clean tech and smart cities. And we want to be a leader in AI. Are there any industries that they're looking to maybe put at the front of the line?
There are so many buzzwords. Honestly, that's like this is where the conversation gets political. When you look at our political leaders, you hear a lot of buzzwords, but then in practice, is there some practicality? If they're saying, we want clean tech, have they created a fund for foreign entrepreneurs who have businesses in clean tech that is giving you like X amount of dollars? No. Are they prioritizing startup visa applications based on sector? No. So then again, I go back to the first question. You have to look at the designated organizations, do your due diligence, research them, and make sure that you find the one and you work with the one that best suits your needs.
Which leads me inevitably to, the designated organization and what role they play in the application process. But you can go, there's a link. You're going to tell me in a minute where to go to find the list of DOs. But how do I choose what one is the right one for me? Some of them go above and beyond. Some of them don't do very much. They just want your money.
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah. And how do I tell which one's the right for me?
Research. You spend some time, research them, right? It's just like school, right? You have usually the better ones, they're harder to get into, but there are some, because we have different forms of startup. You can be a pre-seed startup. You can even be a paper startup. You still have something in your mind. You haven't put it into action. Or you can be a mature startup with decent traction and you're looking for, funding to grow, right? So there are different, very, very different stages. They're very, very different types of startup in terms of their sector. The only thing that I can tell you with certainty, make sure that you do your research. Right? Do not just talk to one, talk to as many as you can. Some of them, they're not even going to get back to you, right? They're not, you send them an application and after 6 months, you're not going to hear about them. So have a timeline and then be very aggressive about approaching all of them, or retain the services of people who know them and work with them on a regular basis so they can, give you good insights about how each of them work and function. So that's the shortcut. If you want to do the shortcut, work with people that are, very active in this industry, ask their insight. If you don't want to do that, just do research, just like, there are only 81, there are not 1,000 of them, right? So just spend some time, a few hours, read their website, find them, do your due diligence, right?
Yeah, you can find a lot of them on social media and stuff first. See also.
Sure, read about them, look at their businesses, find their past customers. I don't know, there are a lot that you can do in terms of, choosing the right designated organization. It's kind of like similar to choosing the right university, right? You go with something that, you look at their professors, you look at their resumes, you look at their past students, you look at their alumni. There are things that you do to choose, to make sure that you're getting value for your money. And not all of them charge you money, right? We have incubators that are absolutely free. Like if you're admitted to their program, they're not going to charge you a thing. But in terms of value, what kind of value do I get? It's a very different story. I can't really say with confidence that all of them provide value. Actually, I can say that the majority of them do not provide you good value. So there are a few that have good value, but then to make sure, you have to do your research.
I definitely recommend talking to people who've gone through whatever program or whatever it is that DO offers in the past to see what kind of support they've gotten.
Absolutely.
So we live in the world where COVID-19 is a reality. Are there still restrictions related to the start of visa or work permit or PR related to COVID? And I'm starting to hear more stuff about COVID coming back. How will that affect the application process?
A startup visa program at the end of the day is a policy, right? And politicians are in charge of policy, and COVID-19 is a perfect excuse for every politician to say, whatever shortcoming we have in administrating government service is because of COVID still. Right. So yeah, you hear a lot about COVID. You still have those disclaimer language on IRCC website saying, oh, COVID this, COVID that. So yeah, it's still there. And it's a perfect excuse for, for people in charge to say, hey, COVID.
So can you provide insights into the post-approval process, including permanent residency and, the entrepreneur's continuing role in Canada?
What specifically? Because when you get your PR, IRCC sends you this pre-arrival notice that you can go. There's some services that you can read, but they're very generic, general. And if you're a decent entrepreneur, you do not need the information IRCC sends you. It's for post PR, you really have, by the time you get your PR in the startup visa program, and that's what we do with our clients. By the time they get their PR, they already know a lot about Canada, right? They already know about their target market. When I say Canada, Canada is a very large country, man. Maybe I said, you know, your market, your specific market, right? It's not the entirety of Canada. By the time you get your PR, you should have a very, very good idea about what you're getting into. So it shouldn't be a question for you, oh, what am I going to do after my PR? If that's the question, it kind of tells me that maybe you're not a genuine entrepreneur, right? You're just like doing something, you're just on a startup and you're waiting for the PR. And then after you get your PR, you just want to start asking your questions. Okay, what am I going to do? Where am I going to settle? How much money do I need? What is my income source, you know? But if you're an entrepreneur, you know, fairly decently, having been working on your startup while you were in this long processing time, you should have a very, very good, solid idea about what it is that you're getting into.
So there isn't much post-approval process that's required from the government to report on?
Well, so DOs are required to report. And that is why, if you look at the service agreements that you as the applicant signed with many DOs, a clause in that agreement is, if we ask you for updates on your business, give us that update. And you have to give them the update, right? And what I have to tell you also is this: we have this quite, again, rightly, I think, in our immigration scheme. We always, and when I say we as the Canadian people, we always reserve the right to come back to you and revoke your immigration status, whether it be permanent residency or citizenship, if we know that you made misrepresentations to Canada, right? So if 10 years later, we know somehow that your business was all a lie and you really made it because you wanted to PR, we can initiate the revocation process. So that's something. But if you were genuine about your business, right? Startup, 90% of startups fail, right? Craig, you know this better than I do. The startup system is a risky venture. So 90% of them fail, right? So if you were working on a startup for 5 years, you gave it your best and it failed, who cares, right? You did your best. That's okay. But if you lied and you kind of used something as a disguise to get an immigration privilege, no, there's always this possibility that your status can be revoked.
Another question here saying, previously we saw applicants applying for permanent residency and work permit at the same time. Lately, we've noticed a trend in people applying for PR first and then waiting months to apply for a work permit. Is there a best practice for this? Do you need to have some traction before?
There is the requirement now that you have to have applied for PR before you can apply for your work permit. So this is the requirement. How much longer after PR you apply for work permit? It really depends on your business. Like, think about it. When you come here, you always have to make a business decision. This is not an immigration decision. You have to make a business decision. Is there a sound business case for going under the expenditure of sending someone to Canada to work on the business? If you want to do 3 meetings, do it on Zoom. But if there is something, you have to be here, you have to do field research, you have to do this, and because you have to explain this at the end of the day in your application, right? You have to tell the deciding officer why your presence, why your physical presence is urgent and mandatory for you to come to Canada. So it's really a business decision. After 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, I work on the, I work on the program, I work on my business, and then I realize now I have to go to Canada, make the application. Then it's a business decision.
Makes total sense. Keep the questions coming. They've been great so far. Canada's a big country. You mentioned it. Are there any particular regions or provinces in Canada that are more welcome for the startup visa program?
Well, general question again, welcoming, who are you, right? What kind of business do you have? It really depends on the business. Some regions, you may have a business that is region specific, like there is this particular need in Manitoba, right? Manitoba is not particularly, they don't get a lot of volume in terms of, the most volume of the startup visa program is BC. Hold on, let me just pull it up here. It's Ontario, BC, and Manitoba. Manitoba is 11%. Ontario is 47.3%. So in terms of volume, I can answer your question fairly easily. It's Ontario, BC, Manitoba, Alberta with 2.6%, and then PEI, which is 2.45%. But then which one is better for you? It's really the question of what it is that I'm doing. Maybe what I'm doing is something that is really, there's a very, very big market for it in PEY. Then it doesn't matter if they get only 2% of the volume because it works for my business. So it's a very business subjective question.
In light of the global startup landscape, you mentioned that Canada's startup visa program is attractive to many of the other ones. Can you explain why we're more attractive than other?
Well, that's the thing. It's attractive because, okay, out of the 19, 20, 21, I don't know the exact number. We can divide the programs globally into two main categories. They're either, we call them lean scheme or thick schemes. Lean scheme is like Australia, UK, Canada. They assume that you already are advanced enough. So we're not going to give you that much support. We tell you, hey, there are 81 designated organizations, go talk to them. If they want you, then we want you. That's, I'm very, in the most simple terms. But the countries that are offering thick scheme, they're saying, okay, maybe you're not that advanced. We have to, give you more support. Like the best example is Chile, right? They have, I think they have this grant of 80,000 US dollars that if they accept you into their startup visa program, they give you the grant of $80,000 and they provide you with a lot of support to make sure that, you can grow your business. It's not, they're not outsourcing it to private third parties, right? They're doing it themselves. There's this French tech visa that comes with, I think, with a 20,000, 25,000 euro grant, right? So there are thick schemes. Canada is lean. They're saying, okay, you're advanced enough. You can do your research. You can go to designated organizations. They have their appetite, get their support. We support you, right? So that's where Canada is in terms of these categories. But then again, Canada has something that a lot of other countries, and I think no other country has. We give you permanent residency from the get-go, right? We say, if you qualify, so the immigration aspect of the Canadian startup visa program is actually a very, very big incentive for a lot of people, and for very good reasons, right? Because if I want to take my life and my energy and my money to a country, I want to have some certainty that I can, settle there permanently. And Canada, quite rightly, is doing this. We say, if you qualify based on this permissive program that we have created, we give you permanent residency. So that's why I say the Canadian startup visa program is attractive and probably is much more attractive than the rest of the programs, even the thick programs like the ones that they're offering in Chile or the ones that they're offering in France, because of this immigration certainty that they give you from day one.
Another question here about location. We work with incubators in Manitoba and Ontario, but occasionally it makes sense to operate and incorporate the business in another province. We've seen issues with the IRCC when applicants arrive in Canada for visits or work when there is a discrepancy. One client even had his work permit changed to 1 month as a result. Is it necessary that application be paired with an incubator in the same province they are incorporated in?
No, it's not a requirement. No, your incubator can be anywhere in Canada. It's just like anywhere except Quebec, right? So the carve out is Quebec. Your incubator can be in Manitoba. Your business can be in Toronto, Ontario, right? But then again, in terms of work permit, because you have to abide by the location of the work permit, it really is all of them. You have to narrow it down to what the business is, right? I can have a business in Vancouver, but I'm getting support from PEY. It's totally fine. But where is the business, right?
Can you provide insights into the role of family members and their eligibility under the program, including spouses, partners, dependent children?
No, there's absolutely nothing in the program requirement that we have to look into your family, right? So, and these are, speculations in the market. Immigration market historically has been always, a very dark, dirty market, and because IRCC is very secretive, right? No, but then as far as the policy and the law is concerned, we don't care about your dependents as long as you show me that you're in a genuine relationship with your spouse and your children are less than 22 years old. They can be a part of your application.
Are there any specific strategies for international entrepreneurs to secure a job offer or employment in Canada while they work on their startup as a mean to qualify for the program?
No, there is basically Google is your best friend. You can, just if you want to find a job in a market, and it depends, which market are you coming from, right? One of the interesting thing about the startup visa program, Craig, is almost 75% of the program come only from 5 countries. Number 1 is Iran, then it's China. So Iran 31%, China 14%, Vietnam 12%, India 11%, and Hong Kong is 7.8%. So 3/4 of all of the startup applicants come from these 5 countries, right? And there's a cultural difference. There's a cultural shock if you're coming. If you're coming from France to Canada, shock is less. If you're coming from US to Canada, shock is much less. So it really depends. Where are you coming from? What kind of experience are you bringing to the table? If you're coming from a radically different market, like if you're coming from Iran to Canada and looking for a job, you have to do a lot of work, right? You have to spend a lot of time into crafting your story into something to tell the Canadian employer why my previous experience is something that you can use. It's a tough sell, honestly, right? But then that's the reality of the market. So it really depends where you're coming from. Know your capabilities, know your abilities. Don't undersell yourself and don't oversell yourself. Just make sure that you get enough advice from people with this experience that can help you navigate this process. Finding a job from many thousand kilometers away from Canada is a very, very hard thing. First, because the distance, employer wants to see you, verify you, make sure who you are. And the other thing is the immigration process, right? If an employer wants to hire you today, it's another thing that is not working with our immigration system. It doesn't give you, as the employer, the speed that you really want to get the people you want. The LMIA process is long, but then again, we have this global talented strategy that streamlines and shortens that process for some jobs. Like if you're a software engineer, if you're a chemical engineer, if you're a civil engineer, then your requirements is less. Employer can get you here faster. I don't want to get into the details of that. That requires another webinar. But generality of the situation is the more different the market you're coming from than the market in Canada, the harder your life will be in securing employment in Canada. That's the reality. So you have to do a lot of work. It's adaptation. We call it adaptation, and it's one tough process, unfortunately.
Canadian government talks about innovation all the time. Is there an innovation component that you have to prove that your startup is innovative, or can it just be doing the business?
What's innovation? Yeah. What is innovation? Are you kidding me? What is innovation? Ask the government next time, what do you think innovation is? Nobody knows innovation. There is no one definition of innovation. So government can talk about innovation because it's a political buzzword, right? But who are we kidding? We don't have a consensus of what innovation means. Innovation as far as the startup visa program is concerned, innovation has 81 different meanings because we have 81 different designated organizations, right? So viability too, right? Viability is another thing. What is viability? It's easier to define because you say, okay, reach break-even point in some certain time, maybe I can call you viable. But then again, these are the things that you can't define in abstract. You have to go to see the source of your definition. And as far as this program is concerned, that source is coming from the designated organization. There are, of course, the officer can superimpose his or her interpretation of innovation into processing your application, and make decisions that are not favorable to you. That's a reality. That's why you always have to get proper legal advice. You have to always know what it is that you're applying for, and you have to know the law perfectly. That's why we always say professional advice. But generally speaking, innovation is just a buzzword. They throw it here and there because they think it brings them credibility.
Yeah, I was wondering what they meant by it. Just from everyone means something different. How does the program handle potential issues related to intellectual property or equity ownership or business disputes with the startup team?
Oh, it's a very general question, but a very good question because it happens. Disputes, they always happen. You have you have a co-founder that is lagging, is not doing the job. It happens. We see it every day in our, in our startup clients. Because as I said, startup business is a risky, fluid, highly dynamic venture. So a lot can happen. You had an exit plan for 5 years, things worked out well. Now you can exit in a 1.5 year. What do I do? These are all possibilities. But then again, are there good practices? No, there's because the program is silent. What we know is the program is defined in a way that it gives you an alternative route to appeal to the officer, to make a judgment about your case above and beyond the regular requirements. So we have that, which is good. It means, the policymaker day one, they kind of saw that these things that can happen. But in practice, it's very, very specific to your situation. You have to definitely get legal advice on how do I approach this, right? We started as 4. We had 2 essential people in the group. Now the essential people are fighting. One of them are saying, oh, I'm going to withdraw my application. If I withdraw my application, the startup falls, the startup fails. We are hearing this all the time. So it's very, very important to immediately seek advice and make sure that you mitigate the risks accordingly. I do not have a general question. I do not have a general answer for you, but I can tell you that the scheme of the program, the scheme of the policy allows you to deal with unforeseen things that happens in the way. How to deal with them? Expert advice.
Sorry, my cat decided to join the webinar today. Costs. Can you provide some insights, the application fees and processing costs associated with startup visa?
Well, the application fee is like it's constant throughout all the lines of business for permanent residency. I think it's right now it's 2,000 something for the main applicant, and there's 1,000 something for your spouse. So that's your application fees. In terms of designated organizations, from $0 to the last I heard that I laughed, it was like I think $180 US$1,000. So it really, then again, you have 81 different answers for that. $0 to 180. And don't quote me on it. This is what I hear from people who get consultations from us on a daily basis, and they say they have experience dealing with these deals. So you have to do your research. They come in different shapes and forms. Incubators, as I said, $0 to whatever dollars. VCs and angels, they usually don't charge you because they come with a commitment, capital commitment. They're saying not only we're charging you, we're committing to invest $75,000 if we are an angel, and we're committed to investing $200,000 if you're a VC.
So we haven't talked, you said at the beginning when we had technical difficulties about yourself. Can you tell us what role you play in helping entrepreneurs come to Canada?
Well, the role we play is we're a business immigration law firm, right? My background as an electrical engineer, I'm a U of T graduate, right? So I know technical stuff, and that background combined with my law background puts me personally in a very good position to understand the business needs and to understand the legal needs. And the legal needs are, immigration is just one aspect of it, is a small aspect of it. There's the business, how do I structure my company? How do I, define my agreements, contracts? There are a lot to be done. So how we help our firm, we are focusing on the intersection between immigration and business law and helping entrepreneurs who are coming from radically different markets. We are very, very focused on the Iranian market because I'm a Farsi speaker of our firm. Almost everybody speaks Farsi in our firm. And we help, most of our business is helping Farsi speakers bring their businesses, set up their businesses, and grow their businesses in Canada. That's the role we play. So we're like your advisor, but you are the main actor. And we usually tend to work with people that are serious and are hardworking, because that honestly, that's what Canada takes. If you want to succeed in Canada, you definitely have to work hard. You definitely need to work hard. If you're a hard worker and you are ambitious, then our firm can give you a lot of value.
So if people want to work with you, because this has been great, we've had a great audience, a lot of questions, or they want to find out more, where do they go?
Shekarian.ca. So Shekarian.ca. I can type it.
Yeah, I'm going to put it in the chat room right now. and I put your email in there as well.
Yeah, you got it, man. That's it. That's how you can reach us.
Fabulous. I really appreciate you taking the time today to answer all the questions. This has been very informative. Thank you everyone for all the questions. And do you have any parting words for our audience?
No, not really. I just want to close with saying, as an entrepreneur, here's my closing argument for you. As an international entrepreneur, that you have a startup and you want to grow it somewhere, Canada, honestly, is your best choice. For Canada, not so much, because if you come to Canada, I want to give you an overview of how the Canadian market working. In 2022, I have actually these numbers and I want to share them. The angel investment of 2022 in all of Canada was $262 million. In US, $36.2 billion. So we're a joke compared to US. VC investment in Canada in all of 2022, and we hit all the records. We got $10 billion. US, same period, $235 billion. So there is decent money in Canada, and we are growing. So if you have a good, as an international, I'm talking strictly business. Come to Canada, build it, grow it, and you always have the option to do a quick transition to US and join the big players, because that's the reality of the market. But for Canada, Craig, that's not a happy story. And I've been raising awareness about this. 75% of the IP owned by Canadian VC-backed ventures are owned now by foreigners. 75%, right? So 75% of them are owned by foreigners, mainly Americans. So Canada is like a stepping stone. You come here, you get your PR, you settle down, you create a market, you work hard on it, you use Shred. We have multi-billion-dollar of money. Come to one of Craig's events. He has a fabulous friend, he's always there, talk to me about Shred. And Shred is honestly something that we always encourage all of our clients, everybody. This is something that the Canadian government is offering. See if you can use it. Is research and development funds. It's refundable tax credit. If you're a CCPC, whatever, just get advice and but know that there is this fund that you can use to advance your business. It's unfortunate it's amazing for international entrepreneurs, right? Because you have this great ecosystem where you can build and grow your business, and you always have the prospect of joining our southern neighbor to reach the big players. But then as far as Canada is concerned, we need to do a lot to keep these entrepreneurs in Canada, because right now we're using a lot of public funds into growing these businesses, and we're losing them to others. That's, as far as Canada is concerned, is not a good thing. But as far as international entrepreneurs are concerned, oh, definitely Canada is your best bet for startup. It's definitely is your best bet. And that's my closing argument.
Fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time today to answer all the questions and give us all these great insights.
My pleasure, Craig. Anytime. Enjoy your weekend, man. It was nice chatting with you, and everybody else in your audience, of course.